Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Welcome to the Mind, Money, Motion program, where we focus on worrying less about money by keeping our mind and body healthy. I'm your host, Marie Burns, a certified financial planner, speaker, author, and founder of the education business called Mind, Money, Motion. My guests will either help you improve your mind by maintaining a positive, active brain, or your money by learning to use your financial tools wisely, or your motion by incorporating healthy diet and exercise habits, all so you can enjoy less worry and more life. I want to thank my co-sponsor, the Women's Enterprise Foundation, for helping to make this program possible. They are a charitable organization that supports and inspires women business owners, because they believe that women are the glue for their communities, which is why the Women's Enterprise Foundation offers grants and scholarships to assist women business owners in the Phoenix area. I'm excited to welcome my guests today, Anna Sparks and Chrissy Barth. Anna is the founder and CEO of Sparks Systems. She is a certified metabolic efficiency training specialist, which is defined as nutrition and exercise's approach to improving the body's ability to use its internal nutrients. She is experienced in the personal health and performance coaching arena, collegiate athletic teams to one-on-one training. She has a bachelor's degree in exercise science and master's in exercise physiology. She's coached Arizona State University's soccer team, transitioned to competitive cycling herself, and today, Anna enjoys non-competitive cycling and is an avid hiker. My second guest is Chrissy Barth. She's a holistic dietitian, which is involving integrative and functional nutrition, also a yoga teacher and mind-body expert, passionate about teaching others about optimal health and wellness by taking the confusion out of nutrition. She's the founder and CEO of Nutrition Lifestyle Education, nutrition coaching and consulting practice based here in Phoenix, Arizona, nutrition consultant to sports teams, spas, medical and training facilities, corporations, local and national media outlets, also a lecturer at the Arizona State University. And she received her undergraduate and graduate degrees in human nutrition from ASU as well. So we'll start with Chrissy, partially because in my past life, I was actually a registered dietitian for about a baker's dozen years. That was many moons ago now. I think this is my 20th anniversary of not. So I have shifted to, instead of helping folks with their diet and exercise, I now help them with their finances. It's all about behavior, in my opinion. But if you can briefly walk us through your story, how you got started and where you got to where you are today.
Sure. I think I was always destined to be a dietitian, I think. I grew up a very active person, young kid, played a variety of sports. And when I was 13, I took dieting to an extreme measure. Type A personality, started just dieting to lose weight and then took it to an extreme measure. And I met with my first dietitian when I was 13. And ever since that moment, learning how to eat, realizing that by eating fat's not going to make you blow up. All foods can fit in moderation. And from that moment on, I've just been so interested in nutrition, and was my first major actually was elementary education, and switched that to dietetics because I can see as a dietitian there's so many different things that one can do, including teaching. When I went to ASU, got my undergrad in nutrition, and then I was really interested in working with athletes, myself being a former athlete, and then also helping those recovering from eating disorders. And at the time, there weren't any positions available for dietitians in those two areas. So I just kind of jumped in, created my own business right after my internship, and literally started knocking on people's doors, physical therapist clinics, medical and training facilities. And lo and behold, they welcomed me. And actually with one physical therapy clinic in town, we still work with each other since 2004. So it's been quite a long time, but just building relationships that way. And then in 2008, I started teaching at a local community college, loved it. And from there led me to ASU, where I'm full-time faculty at ASU now. I teach a variety of nutrition courses, also entrepreneurship class for the College of Health Solutions. And being an entrepreneur myself, I just felt I just fit that area naturally to teach other students how to build your own business. And then I've always kept my own business going. It's evolved over the years. I don't work so much with sports teams as much anymore. I still work with athletes, but in my own business, I'm doing a lot more functional nutrition, working with different integrative and functional medicine practitioners in the Valley, and actually getting certified through 2 different organizations in both functional medicine and functional nutrition. So being a dietitian, there's so many different things that you can do. And I think that everybody can benefit from working with a dietitian, no matter what somebody's goals are, whether that be to improve your performance, for training, or for your work performance. If you have a chronic disease, I think it's working with a dietitian is incredibly important. And I'm always learning myself. So I'm very grateful for my career and also for turning what seemed like it was a negative thing as a 13-year-old, but I've turned that negative experience into a positive one. So very grateful for my path.
Well, you talked about and touched on a lot of things there, and everybody's path begins with childhood. So that sounds like, that was where a deep-seated passion came. And so often they talk about this relationship thermostat that we really develop by the time we're supposedly 6 or 7 years old. Relationship with food or money or people. It's when we've all heard children's brains are like a sponge. It's when the brain is literally a sponge and can only absorb. It can't filter anything. So what you felt with food and relationships transcended into your behaviors then as you got older. But how wise of a teenager to reach out and see, like you said, everybody could use a registered dietitian. We all have to eat, and we make those decisions numerous times in life. So that's really awesome that you already had that passion from the beginning. And then your initial major at college was education. So that's really what you're all about, is the education aspect. So I would think when you mentioned integrative and functional, that's fairly unclear terms to me, I would say, from the standpoint of nutrition. So if you want to maybe enlighten us a little bit more on what exactly that means, that would be great.
Sure. So an integrated and functional nutrition approach to health and wellness is basically that holistic approach. So it's not just about the food. I mean, the food's very important. That's one component to it. But nutrition, hydration, supplementation, herbals, things of that sort. Going deeper or diving deeper into offering different labs. Like in my practice, I offer a myriad of different testing, from vitamin and mineral deficiency testing to allergy, food sensitivity testing. And also another test that I think is a fantastic test is it's based on your genotype. So whatever your genotype is, this company can give you a good kind of like blueprint for what kind of like macronutrients your body needs for optimal health and wellness, what kind of exercise is good for you, how your body metabolizes different nutrients, including caffeine, alcohol, things of that sort. And then I also, in my own practice, I do a lot of lifestyle coaching too. So looking at somebody's sleeping patterns, because sleep is so important for optimal health and wellness. Probably more important than exercise. I think exercise is still very important, but if you're not getting adequate, good sleep, you're not going to eat as well. You're not going to perform as well when you're exercising. So sleep is very important, as well as relationships. Incorporating essential oils, especially nowadays with the virus that's going on around. I mean, essential oils are a great addition to helping you stay healthy. And then also being integrative. So I always refer my clients or patients to other healthcare practitioners whenever that's needed. And then just serving as a great resource for my patients and clients.
Well, the whole diet and exercise ties in. And I would imagine that's where you've maybe been involved with Anna, or how the two of you met. I'm not sure. But the exercise and the diet piece go hand in hand. And I'm curious where you think, people always ask, well, which one's more important? Because I think they're really wondering, well, which one do I really have to do? But I think there's a percentage, right? That Anna, you were kind of sharing with me before about which one is kind of maybe a bigger driver, not more important, but a bigger driver on your health impact, diet versus exercise?
Right. So I would say that if you're not putting the proper fuels in the tank, it really doesn't matter what you're doing exercise-wise. You're not going to get the most bang. So if I had to put a percentage on the two, I would say about 75% is going to be focused on that daily nutrition. And then about 25% would be focused on that movement. And really the movement component, that 25%, is really to enhance that stress management, where you can really combat that stress and anxiety by getting that respiratory benefit, because the more you breathe and, expel that CO2, the more you can kind of keep your brain calm. So when you think about a yoga practice, that's what they're doing. They're teaching you how to use your breath to calm your brain. And so when you get out into nature and you start exercising and you increase that respiratory benefit, well, all you're doing is keeping your brain calm, So part of our practice is we teach people about how to breathe properly. And, when you think back, like even as a kid, no one ever really told you how to breathe. And if you just took a moment to think about when you do start feeling some stress and some anxiety, you automatically start breathing from your chest as opposed to breathing from your diaphragm. And so if you could just take a moment and go inside and just calm down and use that breath, use that belly breathing, that diaphragmatic breathing, you can change your state very, very quickly, And so that's a tool everybody has access to. They just have to be mindful about it.
I think that is what we forget, is that's one reason exercise is so helpful. It forces you to deep breathe. Otherwise, we're shallow breathing through the entire day all the time. And this is interesting because the brain, to me, no matter what subject area we're talking about, the brain has to be in its optimal health to be helping you through decisions in whatever topic it is. And this whole mindset, and the mind can only be as healthy it is if it has oxygen and nutrients. So once again, it's all tied together, mind, money, motion. But I know you do a little bit more with metabolism as kind of a starting point to understand where people are. Anybody that is in any profession needs to ask a lot of questions initially or do a lot of testing. You mentioned labs, Chrissy, to see where someone is, to see what's the priority and where do they need to go next. So talk to us a little bit about the metabolism aspect of this exercise piece.
Sure. So with metabolism, obviously that means how your body is utilizing the food and the oxygen and the hydration in order to produce energy. Instead of just guessing at what your body needs, we actually do a test called a metabolic efficiency test. And when we measure metabolism, then it takes all the guesswork out of when Chrissy is putting together, say, a meal plan for someone. Instead of just saying, using an algorithm, you are a female, you are 30 years old, you're this height, this weight, you require this amount of calories every day, for thriving, for optimal health. We actually measure it. And the only way you can actually measure metabolism is through gas exchange, right? So it's actually breathing, you're measuring your breath. And it's really powerful. Instead of just saying that we're all alike, because we're not. Every body is different. Every metabolism is different. And so with our program, we always begin with a metabolic test to determine where a person's inefficiencies lie from proper nutrition and proper movement. And then we put together a personalized plan that will address those inefficiencies. And then we will remeasure, did our intervention from the proper daily nutrition, the proper movement, the proper breathing techniques, are we moving in the right direction? And regardless what your goals are in life, whether it is that you just want to have energy to play with your grandkids, or you are, a CEO of a company and you need, that high mental acuity all the time. Or if you are just someone suffering from diabetes, you have to first start with measuring it and then apply the proper intervention and then remeasure to see, are we making those improvements? And when you can show people that, the data even, and they just feel so much better. So back to what Chrissy was talking about with sleep, that is probably one of the first things that people notice is that they start sleeping better. And when they start sleeping better, they can now deal with anything that's coming their way, right? And so that is extremely powerful. And I would say that when we measure metabolism and we provide a plan, our main goal is to produce what we call metabolic efficiency. And metabolic efficiency, in a nutshell, is blood sugar optimization. And when you optimize someone's blood sugar, everything gets better. So that's our main goal. And I know that may sound like crazy, but people come in. You asked me earlier, what is the main clientele that we see? And I said, actually, what we do applies to everybody.
Anybody with a metabolism.
You got it.
Well, okay. So having several thoughts as you're talking about this, let's digress, although it's really not digressing, to talk about the sleep piece a little bit. And then I'd like to go back to the diet. Way back, all right, a couple decades ago, when I was a registered dietitian, at that time it was high carbohydrate, low fat. And things have evolved, haven't they? So I want to talk a little bit more about just the general dietary advice. And certainly the tailoring aspect of that makes so much sense, starting with the test. But my understanding of the sleep aspect of our lives is that's almost like the dishwasher cycle time for your brain. It clears things out and rejuvenates the brain if you get through the full sleep cycle. But if you have sleep issues, you don't get enough, you get interrupted, whatever, it doesn't really let the brain do its complete healthy cycle, if you will. Is that some of what you're seeing and what you're trying to help people improve?
Absolutely. So again, back to once you optimize that blood sugar and that sleep gets better, what is actually happening in sleep? So think about it this way. We have the lymphatic system, which is our body's waste management system. Well, in 2015, they actually discovered that the brain has its own waste management system, and they discovered the glial cells. And so it's called the lymphatic system. And the lymphatic system is actually activated when you're in deep sleep. And so what they were discovering were that people that were developing Alzheimer's, dementia, even depression, high anxiety, it was that they were really missing that deep sleep. So once they get into that deep sleep, they would have that almost like a whooshing, right? Just like you were just talking about, where they're clearing that amyloid and that tau. Well, if they're not getting into deep sleep, then they're not getting that clearance. And so even after one night of incomplete sleep, you're starting to build. And so that is crazy to think about. So when we talk about the impact of sleep, I mean, that should really drive it home right there for you, So if we can start with optimizing someone's blood sugar and then they begin to sleep better, then it's a whole cascade of good things that start to take place.
Sure. Chrissy, what do you see? Is sometimes the sleep almost the next step for somebody who comes in thinking that it's diet related, and you're finding in the discovery process that there's much more to it than, like you said, a lot of times people are just thinking, oh, I just want to lose a few pounds. That's why they're coming to see you, they think.
Right. And I mean, definitely taking that holistic approach to somebody's health and wellness. So asking them, like, how are they sleeping? How is stress in their lives? Because if we're stressed out, we're probably not sleeping very well. And if they're not eating well, they're probably not going to be sleeping as well as they could. So definitely taking that sleep into consideration. And what Anna was saying was about that whole like brain health, and by allowing your body to kind of clean itself if you are getting good sleep. There's a huge link too between gut health and brain health. So basically our health starts in our gut. And if our guts aren't as healthy as they could be or should be, our brain's not going to be as healthy. I mean, a lot of like mental health. I mean, I work a lot in addiction and recovery, and we're finding out that that their guts are so unhealthy because of their anxiety, depression, alcohol use, drug use. And once we get that in check by eliminating those drugs, alcohol, and really helping them eat better through education, they feel so much better. I had one of my clients, which is a really interesting story. This young guy, he was in his early 20s, and he was in a detox center for drugs and alcohol. And when I first met him in this group home that I worked at, he was a complete mess. I mean, it was very hard for him to sit still, focus, concentrate. And his typical day was just eating a lot of processed foods filled with certain preservatives that are banned in other countries that we still put them in our food supply. He was drinking tons of soda all day long, no fruits, no vegetables, hardly any water, not a good breakfast. And I had him focus on 3 things that he could change from now till next week. And it was drinking more water, cutting back on soda, eating breakfast, and getting in at least one serving of fruit and vegetable. And when I saw him 1 week later, I didn't even recognize him. He was sitting there, he was focused, he was listening, he was participating. And to see that drastic change in somebody just because they were eating better, sleeping better. I mean, it was a great case study that, that people can change based on eating better. But also like getting that really good sleep is so important too.
So would you say most of the time there's, I'm thinking about which came first, the chicken or the egg? Do you put the cart in front of the horse or vice versa? Is it getting the gut health kind of in line or at least improving in the right direction versus, anytime you hear sleep problems these days, it's, are you watching your screen time an hour before you go to sleep? Are you avoiding caffeine after 7 o'clock at night? All those tips that we think about to get better sleep. But I'm hearing you say it's almost more impactful, the gut health side of things that will then just naturally positively impact the sleep.
I think so. I think it's definitely a combination of both, but I think it absolutely starts with somebody's overall nutrition intake. So if they can get into just eating higher quality foods and being more aware of what they're eating and what they should be eating more of, they're going to feel better. And then also taking those other things into consideration, like staying away from like the blue light, the TV, things of that sort, an hour before going to bed, doing some kind of relaxation exercise prior to going to bed, whether that be some mindfulness, yoga, or reading, just something to help them sleep better. But I definitely think that health begins in the gut. I mean, basically, we're about 90% bacteria, which is quite a bit. And so I think, as far as taking care of our gut health, it's really just learning how to eat for a healthy gut. And that starts with eating probiotic-rich foods or like for fermented foods, for example, like yogurt, fermented vegetables like pickles, sauerkraut, kimchi, and then really eating a lot of fiber-rich foods because fiber, our bodies don't digest the fiber. What happens though is that that fiber ferments in our intestines and that serves as food for our good gut bacteria. So if you're eating a lot of processed food, you probably don't have a lot of that good bacteria in your gut to make you healthy. So by eating more fruits and vegetables, more fiber-rich foods or plant foods, that then serves as good food for our good gut bacteria, which then can affect our brain microbiome as well, because the gut microbiome and the brain microbiome kind of talk back and forth to each other.
Okay, that all makes sense. And then when we're thinking about the exercise side of what we put in our mouth, maybe we need a primer, Anna, on how is it that the body actually uses what we put in our mouth to then fuel our movement?
Absolutely. So the majority of people, especially athletes that come in to work with us, the first thing they ask is, what do I eat when I'm on the bike? Or what do I eat while I'm running? Or what do I eat while I'm exercising? And I'm like, whoa, hold on. If we're there, you've kind of missed the boat. So if you're going to be exercising for, say an hour every day, what are you doing the other 23 hours of the day? That's where we need to put, what did you do last week? What did you do last month? So this isn't all about, we're in this, this state of immediate gratification. Like, what do I do right now? And it's like, no, it's the process. And so going back to a little bit of what Chrissy was just touching on, talking about the gut microbiome and all of that, we first have to identify where people are and really meet them where they're at. Mm-hmm. And then be able to provide them with the tools, that they can really take control of their health. And so, yes, everything that she was talking about with the probiotics and the good, the good microbes, but what she said with her client that she just asked him to do one thing, or asked him to do 3 things, but really, like, if he just did one of those, if he just increased his hydration, then she was going to see a major change in him regardless, right? So I think that, even exercise, yes, it is really, really important. But if we can just get people to commit to making one change, and then the next week, maybe making one more, And so we really start to look at those habits.
Yes.
And how can we, again, it's our job to empower them with the tools to really, again, take control of their health. But every single person is different in where they're starting from, and so it is our job as, health professionals in order to identify and then meet them where they're at and then start that intervention and go at their pace. And that's going to make long lasting change because they're now so much more aware of how they are sleeping, because it's us, we're here, we're asking them all the time, hey, how are you sleeping? How have you been? How is your energy during the day? Do you have any brain fog? We're asking those questions and they're like, oh, hold on. Like I now am equipped with the tools to make really good decisions for the rest of my life, So ultimately our main goal is really longevity.
Healthy longevity.
Yes, along the way,
whatever
your other goals are, whether it be performance, driven or just overall health, like they're going to happen,
So talk to us about the metabolic testing. Is that something that a doctor even commonly thinks of ordering, or is this fairly new science, or it sounds like it's an oxygen, a breath measurement test versus a blood test that somebody just goes, gets their blood drawn, gets their annual physical done. So how does that all work? Is this?
Well, so most people would know of a metabolic test as it's a cardiopulmonary stress test, right? Okay. So, but we actually do two. So let me back up just a little bit. We start with a resting metabolic test. So a resting metabolic test, you're just going to sit comfortably in a chair, 10 to 15 minutes. You're going to have a mask on your face collecting those expired gases. And from that test, what we're able to determine is exactly how many calories you need every day just for brain function, just for survival. But the real power is not necessarily in the amount of calories you need, but it's actually in what of those calories, what percentage is coming from fat and what is coming from carbohydrate. And so once you know that, you get a really great snapshot of someone's resting metabolic rate and what they are preferring for fuel. And once you know that, you can tell. I know right away if someone is pulling from carbohydrate, the majority of their calories are coming from carbohydrate. I know that we've got major blood sugar issues on our hands just by looking at that ratio. And so that's where I know, okay, when we provide them with the macronutrient breakdown, I know that we need to try to start moving this person away from those higher carbohydrate, diets, highly processed foods, and start moving them more towards moderate protein intake, a little bit higher quality fats, and away from all of those, refined grains and carbohydrate. So we move them from a resting metabolic test into an active metabolic test. But that active metabolic test, most people would know that as a cardiopulmonary stress test. But typically, if they go into their doctor and they are getting a stress test, the main thing that they're looking at is what is the end metric, which is called your VO2, like your VO2 max. But as they are going through this test and they are going all the way to that VO2 max for that cardiopulmonary stress test, they are collecting all of this metabolism data. So now you actually can see what their active metabolism looks like. Now, don't get me wrong, that VO2 max, it's important to know because having a higher VO2 max is directly related with a lower incidence of developing cardiovascular disease. Mm-hmm. And that's why they're doing that cardiopulmonary stress test.
Sure.
But what they haven't really been looking at is all the metabolism data leading up to that, which is great information to have. So you can see how they are processing all of their fat and carbohydrate. What are they utilizing for fuel when they start to exercise? Mm-hmm. And so now I can tell them the exact heart rate, the exact exercise intensity, in which they change over from utilizing mainly fat for fuel to utilizing carbohydrate.
Woo.
So now we can put together an exact exercise program that is going to push them towards becoming more metabolically efficient. Right?
So do you see a trend then? Because my mindset is saying, okay, the higher the muscle mass, the higher the metabolism, then that in turn, I would assume is going to shift that fat carbohydrate ratio. So you must see that progression over time if they're motivated and doing what you're advising them to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you can see that we take the combination of the two, the resting metabolic test combined with the active, and then we put together exactly what their daily nutrition needs to look like, what their movement needs to look like, and then also that stress management, that breathing plan.
Awesome. And Chrissy, I know you have something, a Spark score that I'm sure is somehow tied in here with the nutrition side. If you can explain that a little bit for us.
I'll actually refer that to Anna because that's Anna's.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay.
You're good. So the Spark score is just that. It's taking that resting test and that active test, combining it together to be able to provide a client with a score of their metabolic efficiency. So are they very inefficient? Are they somewhat inefficient? Are they efficient? And are they extremely efficient? Right. And so that's where I was saying that we begin with measuring and seeing that initial, and then we provide them with a Spark score. And then we remeasure after we provide them with the plan. And if they are compliant, then they're going to see that Spark score increase. And that is very, very motivating. So by developing the Spark score, I wanted to provide a way for people to compare themselves to themselves over time. And then also, obviously, as we begin to gather more data, I will be able to create all new standards about how people compare themselves to other people in their age group and demographic in regards to their score of metabolic efficiency.
What a great starting point, though, because we're all so different. You absolutely have to be tailored to where you are versus trying to keep up with the Joneses on, where you wish you were physically and nutritionally. Interesting. Well, so I'm still thinking about, back when I was a dietitian and the nutrition advice in general back then. Now it seems there is more along the lines of the Mediterranean diet to the keto diet. Anything diet to me, that is a 4-letter word, and that usually means something temporary, which is usually not the way to eat. So I would love to have you bring us up to speed on everybody wants to know, what are the hot nutrition, food advice trends, but not just hot, but what's really good advice?
Right. There's so many trends out there, but in terms of when it comes to is there a perfect diet for somebody? And I think really just looking at each person as an individual and like Anna was mentioning, kind of meeting them where they're at and then having them just focus on maybe changing 1, 2, or 3 things. But my whole philosophy as a dietitian when it comes to like the best diet or the best way of eating is more of that lifestyle approach. And so it's eating like real food. I don't believe in the diet drinks or the sugar-free stuff. And I just think that's like fake food. I say eat the real stuff, but just be more mindful of how much you're eating. And then also focusing on like the proportions of what you're eating. So making sure that your plate is metabolically active. So you have all those different food groups on your plate, some kind of carbohydrate, protein, fats. And then based on that person, everybody's very different in terms of their body composition, their lifestyle, their activity. You're going to kind of tweak that proportion of carbs, proteins, and fats. But really just choosing whole foods, real foods, not depriving yourself of your favorite foods, because if you do, you might go back and then ending up binging on those types of foods, which I know I've done that years ago. And so that's why I believe in like there's no crazy fad diets. All foods can fit in moderation, and then eating a good varied diet. There is one trend out there when it comes to the different diets, and it's called the Pegan diet, if I pronounce that right. But it's taking the different like paleo principles with the vegan principles. And I think incorporating those principles into a healthy, balanced way of eating is great. However, they do take out different types of foods like dairy, legumes, and grains. And I don't believe in taking out specific food groups, but really just focusing on incorporating the more nutrient-rich types of those foods. Like when it comes to dairy, choosing organic if possible. It's less inflammatory. When it comes to legumes, I'm a big fan of all legumes, just trying to get in like 2 or 3 servings a week. 1 serving is about a half a cup. And when it comes into grains, another trend is choosing more ancient grains. So ancient grains have a lot of fiber. They're actually gluten-free too. So those that have celiac disease that can't properly digest or break down that gluten protein, these ancient grains are great for them. So that's quinoa, millet, amaranth, as well as buckwheat. So all those are gluten-free. So that's a really cool trend. And I think what's great to incorporate other grains into our diets, not just the wheat products, but other types of grains, and making sure that they are a good whole grain source as well.
So that's encouraging. The balance, variety, and moderation theme from way long ago is still with us today. It seems like any diet per se that's one extreme or the other. Like you said, it excludes entire food groups or has you focus on just a few key items. Seems like, number one, that doesn't seem like a balanced, varied diet to give you optimum nutrition. And if you're only doing something for a period of time versus a long-term lifestyle approach to eating, that doesn't sound like the best advice either.
Right, exactly. Now with the keto diet, I mean, I think for certain populations, I think the keto diet is beneficial. I actually work with a functional medicine doctor in town right now with Alzheimer's patients, and we're finding out that those that are diagnosed early on, within that first year, by eating a keto diet can help their brains function better. So for that population, I'm a big supporter for the keto diet. It's called the Keto Flex diet. So it's introducing more of a keto Mediterranean type of way of eating, along with intermittent fasting, which is also very important for brain health too. And then for type 2 diabetes that are not very well controlled, I think the keto diet has been very advantageous for them, but then eventually slowly adding in the more nutrient-rich carbohydrates.
That's what I was going to ask. Is it still a permanent diet per se, the keto? Or like you said, it helps them get towards whatever the challenge is at the moment. I know I have 2 military sons, and I don't think they called it keto, but from what they were telling the boys you need to lose X number of pounds before you can, go to boot camp. They were telling them to do keto types of things.
Wow.
But again, I think it's a short term to accomplish something, but not a long-term good habit kind of approach is what it sounds like.
Right. It's a good jump start.
Okay. I know, Anna, you had mentioned a term related to keeping your insulin quiet. So I'm sure going back to that whole blood sugar aspect of things. So you two, I know, work together from a team approach in working with clients. So I guess I would love our listeners to understand that whole aspect of the impact of your food on insulin and what you see and how that's a beneficial focus.
Absolutely. So understand that we operate off of 2 fuel tanks. I call it like your carbohydrate or your glycogen tank. And then we have what is known as like your fat tank. Okay. So let's start with that small tank, that glycogen, right? We can store about 12 to 1500 calories of glycogen. And we store that in our liver and in our muscle. And that's our small tank, right? It's a really quick burning fuel. If you think about a car, the gas that you're putting in a car, you're going to think about this as almost like kind of like rocket fuel, right? So it burns very, very fast. And then you have this large tank, which is our fat tank. And we can store about 50 to 80,000 calories of fat within our cells.
Some of us more than others.
So even the leanest people will still store, at least about 30K worth of fat, of energy within their fat cells. So what happens is when you wake up in the morning, and, we've always been told breakfast is the most important meal of the day, right? And people, straight away will go for, maybe they have oatmeal and a banana, right when they wake up. And so what happens is their blood sugar they're going to have a blood sugar response. But when they woke up, you start out with having about 1 teaspoon of blood sugar flowing through in the morning. And the moment they introduce that oatmeal and banana, boom, that blood sugar is going to go up. And so when that blood sugar goes up, now insulin is going to be released from the pancreas, and it's going to come in to try to bring that blood sugar back down to that 1 teaspoon, because that's where it wants to be. And so what then happens is we go, that oatmeal and banana did really nothing for me. I'm hungry again. And so I'm going to eat something else. So they eat a granola bar. Well, now blood sugar is going to go back up. More insulin is going to be released from the pancreas. And then, hey, it's lunchtime. It's time to eat again. I'm going to have a sandwich and a bag of chips. Boom. Blood sugar's back up. More insulin's coming out. And so what happens is that we spend this entire day in this elevated insulin state. And what does that cause? Insulin resistance, right? Or diabetes or metabolic syndrome or weight gain, right? And so this whole concept of keeping insulin quiet is massive. And how can we keep insulin quiet? Well, one is we can either introduce foods that are a little bit higher in fat and protein, which don't cause such a blood sugar response, which means that not as much insulin is going to be released. Or you can have periods of time where you aren't eating, right? If you're not introducing food in, well, then insulin's gonna stay quiet. So back to what Chrissy was talking about with some intermittent fasting, which that's a pretty, hot topic right now. And part of our job too is to educate people on how to use the proper feeding windows, and be able to, again, meet them where they're at. Because the moment I would say to my clients, the word fasting, that's a pretty charged word. And they automatically relate, I'm going to starve to death, right? And so it's my job to, one, we say, okay, what is one thing you can commit to? Because I know that I'm going to start them on the path towards opening and closing their feeding windows. I just ask, what's an hour of the day that you can commit to stop eating by? And that's one thing that they feel that is they're in control of. So we say, if you finish dinner at 7 p.m., can the kitchen be closed by 7 and you won't go back in there? And they're like, oh, yeah, that's something that I can do. And so what I know is that that's going to start their fasting window, and then if they can commit to that, for how long? And then the next thing we do is, okay, now you have started your fasting at 7 p.m. And now when you wake up in the morning, understand that breakfast is break fast. So the moment that you introduce food in, you're breaking that fast. But by this point too, we've started introducing a real foods approach. So now they're eating really healthy foods that are working well for their bodies. And we're taking out a lot of the processed grains and processed carbohydrates, think packaged foods. And so what happens, they stop eating at 7. They begin to, now they're not, say they're going to bed at 10. They now have 3 hours that they've metabolized everything. So now when they go to sleep, they're able to utilize their internal fat stores for fuel. And then the moment that they wake up, if they delay that time in which they have breakfast, maybe they just have a glass of water. They start to focus on their hydration in the mornings. And then they delay the time in which they begin eating. Well, now there we go. We have them kind of on their way towards using real foods and then also using the timing of those foods as well. And that's a winning combination. So Chrissy understands the testing that we do, and she understands the value behind knowing the exact what the clients are utilizing for fuel so that she can put together that proper nutrition plan. But she knows that it is going to be modified, along the way. So depending upon where that person is starting, what the intervention is from the daily nutrition, and then she's going to continue to modify, and she's going to use the timing of those nutrients as well in there.
So Chrissy, what would be the better versus the bowl of cereal or a granola bar, the better breakfast choice as an example? I'm hearing something with some protein and or fat in it to sustain the blood sugar and prevent the spike.
Sure. I think for that breakfast, I think it's just having a more balanced breakfast. So, I mean, I'm a big proponent of oatmeal. I would say buying not like the processed oatmeal in the packages. I'm making more like steel cut oats, watching how much you're having, but then having that with some kind of healthy fats, maybe like a small handful of nuts and maybe like some scrambled eggs on the side and some berries, just to make it more balanced then. Because by just having the oatmeal, maybe it's more processed. With the banana, it's a lot of carbohydrate, not enough protein and no fat. So just really just making it more of a metabolically active breakfast by adding more protein and good healthy fats to it.
Awesome. I intentionally asked, and it's hard to coordinate 3 people's schedules these days, right? But I still remember that March is National Nutrition Month. So I was glad that we were doing this program now. Is that kind of an ongoing monthly theme that you try to use as an awareness thing, Chrissy, as you're, reaching people and helping them move forward in their nutrition lives?
Sure, absolutely. And what March is, what our goal is as dietitians is to really help educate the public about how to incorporate good food eating habits along with exercise. So, and not that all or nothing approach. It's all about balance, moderation, variety. Because if somebody goes in that they have to change everything, like exercise every day, change their diet completely, it's probably not going to work. It might work for a day, but then they're going to be like worse off than they were prior to making that change. So really just try and incorporate more just healthier eating habits and exercise habits to where it's more of a lifestyle change, not an all or nothing approach.
Right. Great. And I think there's still a lot of confusion out there, though, too, between a nutritionist and a registered dietitian. Can you help clarify the differences there for folks so that they can understand the background of who they may or may not be listening to for advice?
Sure. Well, a nutritionist, there really isn't any type of certification to be a nutritionist. I mean, anybody can call that themselves a nutritionist. It sounds great, but doesn't have any kind of really proper certification. Where a dietitian, you basically need to go to school, get your 4-year program or 4-year degree in nutrition and dietetics. Now they're actually making it soon to be a master's level position or degree. It's 4 years of undergrad, 2 years of grad school in nutrition dietetics. And after that, it's a very competitive process to find an internship, as I'm sure you probably remember doing that. It's very competitive. And when you get into an internship, you're interning for about 6 to 12 months. It's a great experience. You work very hard at that. And oftentimes you have to pay for your internship, which is a little bit challenging. And then once you finish your internship, you then sit for a national registration examination. And then once you pass that exam, you become a dietitian. And then after that, every 5 years, you had to obtain 75 CEUs. And in addition to that, if you wanted to, and a lot of us dietitians love to continue learning, there are different specialty courses that you can take as well.
So a lot more to it than I think most folks realize. It's educated, very educated, and ongoing educated advice versus somebody that can just hang out a shingle and not have really any oversight on what they're saying or doing and providing to folks. So hopefully that's good peace of mind to be aware of. I know we talk about a lot of different things in these mind, money, motion conversations, and I try to always end with at least my 2 or 3 takeaways from each of you of what we've been talking about, but then to also throw that back to you to say, if there was only 2 or 3 things that I hope every listener gets from this conversation, like what should they do differently tomorrow? What would that be? So if I don't hit that nail on the head, I want you to add that, please. And then also to give our listeners an idea of where are you again? How can they reach you? What's the best way to tap into the resources and the education that you have to offer or to contact you for more of your services, okay? So I'll start with Chrissy. I think one of the key things that I kept hearing over and over from you, which is, I think, really wise, is the holistic approach. Don't just think it's only the diet that I have to fix. It's being aware of and acting on the sleep, the diet, the exercise, the lifestyle, all the rest of the aspect of your life. That whole gut health and brain health link, I think, is something that we're becoming more and more aware of. Sometimes it's because Alzheimer's is becoming, the new AIDS, the new cancer, everybody knows somebody that's affected by some form of dementia like Alzheimer's. The probiotic-rich foods, I think, was a really good point, having some fermented types of foods along with the high-fiber plant-based foods. And then your whole, I'm a big believer in you got to break it down to commit to. You both said 1 to 3 things because it's not likely to happen. So the 3 things that you shared with the gentleman, hydration, drinking more water, having breakfast, incorporating fruits and vegetables. So picking out 1 or 2 doable, can commit to until they become a habit and then moving on to something else. So any other really key, like common mistakes or misunderstandings or things that you see a lot of people come in when they see you that you really want to be sure that they're understanding better or acting on better that maybe I haven't mentioned?
I think you hit everything, like bullseye, everything. Excellent. Very good listener.
Okay, well, great. Well, how about those that are listening? Best way to reach you, resources you have for them to learn more. If you want to share that would be great.
Sure. You can reach me, my phone number, 480-332-8127. My website, it's www.nutritionlifestyleeducation. My email address is Chrissy@nutritionlifestyleeducation. And some great websites that you can go to for additional information, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. Oh, I should know this. I'm getting certified through them. The Institute of Functional Medicine is another really great one with great information.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, and Anna, I think your whole delineation or clarification about using breath to calm our brain is really what the exercise aspect and the metabolic efficiency testing is trying to help get to with that blood sugar optimization. So that was very clarifying for me. I really didn't understand the whole metabolic testing side of things, and that you could really know where am I and where do I personally specifically need to go. The sleep aspect, I like the way that you explained the lymphatic system being like the waste management system, and sleep is, kind of the waste management system, or at least that's impacting the brain. And deep sleep helps to clear that. So I think that reinforces for people, you can't just poo-poo sleep. So many people, almost everybody I know that you talk to a bit, seems to have some kind of a sleep issue. So doing something about that, or maybe doing something about the diet, and then if there's still sleep issues, sounds like really wise advice. And then the last analogy, again, the two fuel tanks, having the fat tank and the carbohydrate tank, the small versus large, and just simple tips, as far as breakfast, incorporating the protein and that intermittent fasting. And wow, if you can combine the two, all the better. So anything that you would add that you think you really want to be sure the listeners are getting from what you're feeling like you're all about in your practice? And again, more information about how they can reach you and where they can find your business information.
That was great. Everything that you just touched on. I think the only other thing I would add is that when people are thinking about using nutrition when they want to make a change, I think they're already in the right mindset. I think that's huge. And so if you need guidance, then like if you're curious, then let Chrissy and I we'll be a great resource for you, because we'll help guide you and make sure that you're doing it properly so that you get the most bang for your time. And so we definitely always try to push, a quality over quantity, approach, and let us help you through that.
I think we all get farther if we're ready to get farther. You can talk about it forever, but if you're not really ready, then it doesn't go as far. But
yeah.
Right.
So you can check out our website. It's sparkssystems.net. My email address is anna@sparkssystems.net. And feel free, go. There's a lot of testimonials on our website, a lot of great, some blog posts. You can find us on, social media, but would love to help anybody and everybody that's out there. We definitely want to empower you with the tools, like I said earlier, to take control of your health.
And you both have locations here in Phoenix, but I know we're all evolving to be even more remotely available. I know I have clients in 8 different states, and that works. So I would imagine you're able to accommodate that as well.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
All righty. Well, I thank you both for your time. I thank our listeners for listening to this episode of Mind, Money, Motion, where we share how to worry less about money by taking care of our mind and body. You can find this podcast, past episodes, and related tools and resources at mindmoneymotion.com, or find us on Facebook. Please join us next time for less worry, more life. I'm Marie Burns.